Welcome back, everyone. As you probably guessed from the intro and the thumbnail, we have a very cool video for you here today. This is the Franchi SPAS-12. These guns are in movies, in video games. If you are under the age of 30, you probably recognize it as a video game gun. If you're over the age of 30, probably as a movie gun. But these guns are super cool looking, super aggressive looking, and I've been wanting to get my hands on one for a long time, and we finally did into this gun. So what actually makes this gun cool? Well, pretty much everything. Like we talked about, it looks super cool, it looks super aggressive, but it also has some very interesting features that really not a lot of shotguns on the market, especially today, offer. So basically it is designed as both a semi-auto, meaning that it will run without any type of manual action from the user, and as a pump action shotgun. So it can do both, and you can set it up and configure it to fire in either role. And real quick, before we head out to the range and actually do some shooting to show you guys how it works in that way, I just want to explain how it works. So essentially it all is powered by this little button right here. So you push in and either pull back for manual or push up and forward for semi-auto, and that really is it. Once it clicks in, at this point, like in the forward position, you are in semi-auto, and if you want to switch back at any time, it could be in the middle of a magazine. Basically just push in your button, pull back, clicks in, and you are back in pump action. Got it loaded up with some buckshot. We'll see how she runs. Hard to do any better than that. We got some birdshot in there, so I switched it over to manual mode. Let's see how she runs. One time I feel like I missed the forward stroke because the springs were assisting it. I think it's just a learning curve because it is a little bit different than your traditional pump. Got some buckshot in there. We're gonna run it on manual and see how that runs. One thing I will tell you for sure, you feel that on your cheek with the buckshot. So as we just saw, the stock itself looks very cool, and there's a lot of unique things going on with it. However, it can thump you in the cheek with the right load on it. So let's get into this stock in a little bit of detail. There's a lot going on, like we said. I should also mention that the SPAS-12s were made in different configurations. Some of them had fixed stocks. The ones that really people want, and the most expensive ones, of course, are going to be the ones with this stock, with these accessories that we have here. And then additionally, with this 8-round tube, some of them came in with 5- and 6-round tubes, and then some of them came in non-threaded as well. But basically what you're looking at here in this configuration is the one that most collectors want. Additionally, this has a lot of original parts that were later updated, but if you're a collector, you don't want the updates, right? So we'll get into all that here. But with that, the stock itself, there's a lot going on, like we mentioned. So basically we have a button on this one here to push up and actually fold it into place. Now, some of these buttons are actually different. Some of them will actually have a notch here on the stock mechanism itself to go around it. This one you have to physically push in to go ahead and put it back down in the fixed position. But at this point, you can obviously fold it forward. There's actually a latch mechanism that locks into this rear sight in the actual stock itself. So basically there, it's not locked in, but if we push down, now it is locked into place. Additionally, you can also move this little hook portion down as well and get that nice and flat. So it's kind of hard to do, but I should be able to do it. There you go. Yep, so we can put that down and get it flatter. Additionally, this hook actually pulls out and it also turns, and it's kind of like the original pistol brace, if you will, or the SIG brace as they were called when they were first invented, which we'll show you here in just a second. But in this configuration, that is a mean looking little shotgun. It's one of the reasons, again, that it's always in the movies and in video games. It just looks super cool, super aggressive, and I definitely do dig that. Again, in order to actually collapse it back out, we're just gonna do that. Pull back on the latch, and then of course on some of them, like I was mentioning, you could just push this down and it would manually go in because of the design of the stock. However, this is the one that has the straight stock that most people want for collectible, and then it just snaps into place. Additionally, you're just going to push this piece right here in and kind of fold this piece down. However, I will tell you this one is tight on mine. From what I've read online, that is not uncommon for the early versions. Apparently, the later import ones were a little bit easier, but let me mess with this and I'll be right back. Through the magic of video editing, we have it back in the original position. It's just a little bit difficult without tools on this one, again, because it's kind of new in that regard. One other cool thing though about this hook that it gave you the ability to do, which again was kind of weird for the time, is to actually push up and you can rotate it 90 degrees in either direction, right or left-handed. And what that gives you the ability to do, which is kind of wild considering when this was designed, but it gives you the ability to be stabilized and fire it one-handed. Now, the actual practicality of that may be limited, let's say. However, it does actually work. And this thing is like a 10-pound gun, so it is not lightweight. And that definitely does give you the ability to fire it one-handed much more easily than you would otherwise be able to do so. The only real practical reason I could think to do that would be like if you were like a breacher and you had a shield or something like that. But that would be this would be a really weird weapon for somebody with a shield who's in law enforcement. I suppose weirder things have happened, but it would be weird. And of course, to get it to go back, essentially the same thing. You're just gonna push down and twist it back into position. If you rotate it 180 degrees, you can actually pull it out and just remove it if you don't want to actually use it. And from a practical standpoint, if you were just shooting this gun with the stock extended like this, that's probably what I would do. If I was like using this for home defense or something like that, I would remove it. There's really no practical reason for it, in my opinion. It's a little bit more comfortable in the shoulder without it. But I suppose that is up to you. Continuing on forward, we do have our sling swivel right here. That is what that portion is. These are actually relatively commonly broken if you guys see these on the market. And you can actually get replacements right now. There was like a 10-15 year period where you couldn't. However, nowadays you can if you actually do have a broken one. Of course, this one here is in stock. And continuing forward, like we talked about earlier, there's been some rolling design changes with these over the years. One of the bigger ones is this right here. This is your safety. So right now it is in the fire position. And of course, if you rotate it the other way, that will be in the safe position. Now, every single gun that was ever produced with this mechanism right here is under a total recall from the folks over at Franchi, I should say. And the reason for that recall is the fact that if you rotate this enough, eventually the mechanism will give out and it will cause the weapon to fire when you rotate it into fire without actually pressing the trigger. Obviously, that is a less than desirable feature for a gun. So if you're using this for, like, again, home defense, self-defense, something like that, you probably want to change that out. I would do my best to keep the original parts though, because again, for collectability, that does increase the value for sure. Moving forward on the receiver, we do have this button right here, which is your magazine cutoff. It's a very weird feature for most shotguns. However, if you think this was designed primarily for law enforcement and military contracts, that gave the individual operator some additional options that you wouldn't have without it. So let's just say you had this in either pump or semi-automatic, I suppose it really doesn't matter, and you had it loaded up with buckshot and you wanted to load like a beanbag round in there for like crowd control or something like that. Number one, in modern policing, everyone would say that was super unsafe. However, back in the day, that was the kind of thing that departments did. So you could cut your magazine off, run the action, get the round out of the chamber, load a beanbag in, and that way you don't have to worry about the actual buckshot getting back in there. Again, in modern times, we all realize why that would be a little bit weird and super risky. However, back then, that was like a feature that was a selling point of the gun. You don't need to use it at all. Obviously, you can just completely ignore it for normal use, but it is there, so just know that. Additionally, over on this side, the left side of the receiver, we do have our bolt release, and it's a weird function because it functions differently in semi-automatic and in manual. So, but that is what it's there for. So basically just push it and you can start operating things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to without pushing it. So that definitely is cool. It also works to open up your loading gate as well. So it's a multi-function button that you really don't see things like that, at least that function the way it does on other modern semi-automatic shotguns. To explain those buttons a little bit more in detail, so right now we have it set forward in the semi-automatic position, and if we wanted to go ahead and load it, you can't. The way to do that is we do have this little lever right here, and we're just going to push it back, and that way you can actually run your bolt. As you can see, at this point, it will lock to the rear, assuming there's no ammunition in it, which of course there isn't. And then at this point, your bolt release works in the traditional way. So this is how normal bolt releases work, where you just press it, and it sends it home. So that is how it functions in the semi-automatic mode. But again, in the manual mode, put back like that. And once you're in manual mode, the same sequence is going to work here, where you're gonna have to work that lever on the left side of the trigger guard. At that point, you can run the action. And again, assuming you're out of rounds, it is going to lock back. And then if you want to send the action home, you have to press your button here, and that will allow you to get it home. So that is sort of how it works. It's a lot. You kind of need 3 hands with it sometimes, but again, it is a product of the era that it was made for sure. Continuing on forward of the receiver, we do have gigantic ghost ring sights on these. Some of these came in with different sighting options. I do think this is probably one of the best sighting systems of the SPAS-12s, if you will. This one, of course, has the built-in hook for the stock. Again, some of them did, some of them didn't. Gigantic ghost ring rear, and then up here just a blade front sight. The sighting configuration works well for a shotgun. You really don't need anything more in my opinion. However, they do offer optics mounts for them. If you guys are interested in that, they are a Weaver style optics mount. They are out there, but like everything with this shotgun, nothing is cheap on it. None of the parts are cheap, none of the accessories are cheap. And one of the reasons for that, one of the big reasons for that, guys, just so a little trip down memory lane, if you will, is that these shotguns were imported for decades into the United States, not in huge numbers. However, in 1994, that all ended, thanks Bill Clinton. And after that, we just weren't able to import them anymore. And that really is what has driven the rarity of them and the difficulty getting parts. You definitely can get more parts now in 2024 than you could a decade ago. However, it's still harder than it would be with a normal functioning environment and not having to worry about bans and importation and all of that stuff. And if we move forward of that rear sight, you'll see we do have a gigantic heat shield on the top of the actual barrel itself. And then the actual function of it in manual mode, again, if we hit our little lever here on the rear, if we actually run the handguard, one thing you're gonna note there is those springs are actually compressing while you do so. So it definitely feels very weird. And again, it's gonna lock back because there's no ammo in it. If there was ammo in it, it wouldn't do that. We're gonna press our release. And at that point, as you guys can see there, I didn't do anything. It just goes home essentially by itself because of that spring tension. So when running the action, that is something that is different if you guys are used to pump actions than you would normally feel. It feels weird, and it's kind of a timing thing to get it right, but it's not hard at all. It's just a few magazines through it and you'll have it down. Continuing on forward, like we mentioned, this one here does have an 8-round tube. That would be the most desirable one. There's also several different barrel lengths that have come in over the years. Generally speaking, they're obviously going to be 18.5 inches to like 21 inches, but you will see different variants out there. This one, of course, is threaded for several different devices, one of them being a device that is, again, fairly expensive, but what it's designed to do is take buckshot loads and concentrate the actual shot pattern as it goes down range for anti-personnel type of use. Those are out there. You can find them. However, again, they're going to be anywhere from $600 to like $1,000 if you guys can find one, but that is why we do have that threading at the end out there on the barrel. And with that, I think we've covered most of the details of the shotgun itself. A few things that we didn't talk about that we always talk about here on the channel is going to be reliability. This gun was 100% reliable. A lot of people think that it may struggle with birdshot in semi-automatic mode, which I definitely expected as well. However, we ran several different types of Winchester as well as Fiocchi birdshot through it on semi-automatic and manual, obviously. It had 0 issues of any kind. Now we got it set back to semi-auto, and we are going to shoot some Remington 7 1/8 birdshot through it. So it might not function. Only one way to find out. Handled it just fine. I will tell you, there is a notable difference in what the felt recoil with that stock with the birdshot. It's perfectly fine with the birdshot. Buckshot rattles the teeth a little bit. A lot of these guns, of course, are going to be older. They're all 30 plus years old at this point, and some of the parts may be worn out, but this one is in great running condition. So reliability was perfect. Can't be any better than it has been. Price point on these, obviously, again, this one here can be yours if you guys get entered to win in the contest. But if you were to actually price one out that's configured like this, it's going to, generally speaking, be $5,000 plus. So very expensive gun. And that, of course, is only going to go up over time because more of them will not be imported. That just sort of is the nature of the beast. So that is the cost on there. And really, again, the contest that we're doing here for the giveaway is only going to be good for 14 days, so it will be ending on the 14th. So if you guys want to get entered to win, now is the time to do so. Again, head over to fanofthem.com/gear to enter. And with that, we'll let Mr. Colt look at it and end the video there.